Hello guys, welcome back to the YouTube or podcast or whatever you're listening on. And today I'm going to be going over my NFC South rankings for fantasy football. And this is sort of a new thing. I'm starting this series I don't know if I'm going to be doing this series every 2 weeks and putting a mock draft in between or what am I going to be doing, but I need to be consistent with these as the fantasy football draft season is almost up already. So, kind of irritating for me, but I can just send out or just go over my list, and then this whole thing won't need to be happening. But I don't think I'm going to be able to get it through any more than one more division. So I'm probably going to pick an AFC division because of the fact that I haven't done one yet. So not that it really matters, but I'm probably going to have to start just going over my rankings, like my quarterback rankings and my running back and all that stuff for fantasy football. But let's just get into it because I'm taking forever. For the Buccaneers is the starting team. Tom Brady, his ADP, average draft position, is 70.9. So he's pretty much going at pick 71, which is super early to be taking a quarterback in my mind. I just don't believe that is that valuable at that position in the draft. But he is my QB 11, so I don't think he's going to have a repeat of his fantasy performance last season. But I think he could still be good. So there is that. But it's kind of a short one. Like, Tom Brady is good. He'll be consistent. He'll get you like 20 points a game. But I just think there's better options out there in terms of upside of quarterbacks. Leonard Fournette, his ADP is pretty much 21. He's my RB7. So I think that's roughly about where he should be taken, which I think I would take him. Although Rachaad White does scare me because I think he could take over a majority of the receiving game from Leonard Fournette. So there is that, which is scary. But moving on from that, because Leonard Fournette is still a good running back, but moving on from him, going over to Chris Godwin, who I was very, very skeptical about, and I still am. He is going at 65 in drafts, roughly about pick 65. He's my wide receiver 27. There's so many targets on that offense. You still have Russell Gage, Mike Evans. You also have Julio Jones, Kyle Rudolph, Cameron Brate, Leonard Fournette, Rachaad White, and Scotty Miller are all of your targets. I just don't think Chris Godwin is going to be a good receiver this year. And I think that ADP is way too high. I think it should at least be 80 if you're drafting Chris Godwin. I just don't believe that he will even come close to the season that he had. And that scares me, and that is shying me away from him in drafts this football season. So, moving on from Chris Godwin and all that skepticalism, Mike Evans. Average draft position is 33, which is roughly the back end of the third round in 12-man leagues. Well, it's not roughly, it is. And he's my wideout 5, so I think that is an absolute steal at the spot. Even with all those targets, he has been a consistent 1,000-yard receiver, and that, as it is already a guaranteed 100 points, which, when you look at it compared to a lot of receivers, that's not a lot, but that's guaranteed points. You can't take away guarantees. So, he'll probably have upwards of 10 touchdowns and, let's say, in a half PPR format, at least 80 catches, so that's another 100 points. So at minimum, I think he has 200 points. That's a safe option. Obviously, at the ADP, you want more upside there, but I just think Mike Evans is too good for you to be passing up. So, that's why he is my wideout 5. I mean, that's not a very good explanation, but I'll go over to my actual ranking video, which will be probably at least a half hour long per of my rankings. Kyle Rudolph, his ADP is 169th, but is unranked for me at tight end. I do need to expand my list because going over all those things, I'm going to have a variety there. But Kyle Rudolph is just unranked. He'll be a good tight end, I think, in real life, but I think fantasy is not his best spot that he's ever been in, obviously. But I mean, I think you can get decent value with him there. It's just the fact that it's difficult to be able to find targets in that offense. So I am very skeptical. But hey, draft him at that spot if you were so comfortable with him. But I think you're listening here to get some advice in fantasy football or just the NFL in general. So, you know, I wouldn't really draft him at his spot. But after that, now we go to the Saints and Jameis Winston, whose ADP is 167.3, and that's roughly about 167. So that is actually decent range for a quarterback, I believe, and he's my QB 15. So I believe he'll be middle of the pack with all of those amazing receivers he has there. I think he will be fine, and I think he's a solid quarterback option. Even as a backup, he will be a great backup, but he is just such a good, and I mean good, quality, probable starter for the Saints that with everything that they got going down there, I like it because of how many weapons he has to throw the ball to. Now moving on to Alvin Kamara, whose ADP is roughly about 19, and he's my RB5. I'm completely fine with that. The hearings of his trial aren't going to be probable until next year, so that gives him immense value in this season, but he deserves where he's being drafted. He has very, very high receiving upside, and he's still a great rusher. A lot of people have seen what he can do, and he is the pinnacle of receiving backs. So, draft him wherever you have the chance to. I would even consider drafting him at pick 10. That's how confident I am in him. Alright, so Michael Thomas, let's just get this out of the way. His ADP is roughly about 76. And my wide receiver ranking for him is 29. I'm just not a big fan of Michael Thomas this year. So I'm just getting that out of the way. Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave have pretty similar ADPs, as in they're going within like one round of each other. And that Chris Olave is going 14 picks behind Jarvis Landry. So roughly about 118 to 132 is the range where both of those receivers are going. And they're completely unranked for me. So not a lot was really talked about with the Saints, mainly because of the fact that I am not a big fan of them as a fantasy team outside of Winston and Kamara. Now, moving over to the Falcons, you got Marcus Mariota, whose ADP is roughly about 143. He is my QB 21. I don't think this is good value, and I just don't think you should be drafting him in that spot unless everyone else in your league is taking the quarterbacks, because you're going to need to fill that spot. But that is just not a favorable draft position for a guy like him, so I am not on top of that there. But Cordell Patterson, his ADP is 80. But he's my RB24. Don't recommend drafting him there because of Drake London coming in. That obviously takes away some targets from him in the red zone and some runs from him in the red zone. Kyle Pitts, year 2 or 3, I believe it is 2, and he is going to want the ball in the end zone more, so that is at least 6 touchdowns there taken away between the two of those guys. So that already puts him down probably in the bottom 20 of backs, and they have Tyler Algier, who's at least going to take away 2 to 3 touchdowns at minimum. So you put him there, probably RB30, but I have that upside of 24 because I don't think they're going to want to not use him. Now moving on to Drake London, whose ADP is 97, roughly, and he's my wideout 36. Simply put, no value there. I think Drake London will be a good receiver in terms of just being good as a player. I don't think he's going to be good in fantasy, so have your own opinion, but I just don't think he'll be good in fantasy. Kyle Pitts, 41.7, so roughly about 42 is his ADP. He's my tight end 3, and I think that's roughly about fair for where he should be going. Very high receiving upside, so, as a safety net for Mariota. Now moving on to the Panthers. I'm just trying to get through this because I got other things to prepare for you guys. But Baker Mayfield is at 169-ish is his ADP. And he is a QB 18, so it's not a very favorable position for me there. But I think he should be alright. CMC, Christian McCaffrey, his ADP is 4.4, so roughly just about 4. And this is a lot of 4s, but he is my running back 4. So, a lot of 4s in that sentence, but just great player. Not much else to say. DJ Moore, coming in, his ADP is 34.3. He is my wideout 12. I think you take a bit of a reach just grabbing him there, but I don't think it's too severe, so I'm not that concerned. I think I'd take it just because of the humongous upside he has. And Robbie Anderson and Tommy Tremble are both unranked in my rankings, so I wouldn't recommend drafting either of them, but Tommy Tremble is a good free agent acquisition because his ADP is 357, and Robbie Anderson is 159. So I wouldn't recommend grabbing either of those guys in the draft. Maybe wait until free agency because I'm sure they'll get dropped. So without further ado, that is the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed. So, see